All right, good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Brandon Woolley. I'm with the Billings Police Department. I'm the Public Information Officer, and I've been asked this morning to provide the initial brief this morning on the incident regarding the water from the ditch over in the Burnstead area. And as a result of a multi-agency response, I'll kind of tee this up for us so the agencies can talk about what occurred this morning. First of all, we just want to talk about who's going to be speaking. Billings Fire Chief Pepper Valdez is going to be here. City Administrator Krishka Kolsky, Mayor Bill Cole, DS Director Casey Williams, and the Billings Bench Water Association representatives Jim Stott and Gary Davis are here to make statements and answer any questions. The first thing I want to say is that we're going to provide some orientation, and this is all preliminary information of what we kind of know. This happened just early this morning, so we're still trying to put some pieces of things together, but this should lay some stuff out for you. As you look at the screen behind me, there was some flooding that occurred this morning in the area of Burnstead. Really between the area of concern is going to be between North 19th Street and North 22nd south to about 8th Avenue North. That is the main general area of concern that had some flooding this morning. The primary areas where most of the water was in the 2000 block of Burnstead from the ditch south of there. If you look up on the screen as well, there's an entrance to the canal that goes underneath of the rims, and that is also a landmark of orientation when we start talking about things. For your orientation, the distance between where some flooding occurred that went down the 2000 block of Burnstead and the entrance underneath of the rims was just a little less than a half mile, so 2,500 feet roughly is about how far away these two events were. So I'm going to give you a rough timeline of what occurred. At about 6 a.m. this morning, the Billings Bench Water Association noticed high water in the canal. By 6:30 a.m., the flow of water into the canal was ordered to be shut down, and the Canyon Creek diversion gates were opened to reduce flow. At about 7:06 a.m., Jim Stott with the Billings Bench Water Association called 911 to report high water, and I believe it was overflowing at that point up by the rims. Is that correct, Jim?
I don't think it quite started to overflow, but it was very close.
It was close. So that was the first call to 911 was about 7:06 a.m. this morning. At about 7:15, the Billings City County Communications Center started to receive reports from residents in the area of the 1900 and 2000 block of Burnstead. That water from the canal was flooding apartments and the roadway. This resulted in a response by the Billings Fire Department, local emergency responders, and notifications to the DS Director, Casey Williams. At about 7:23 a.m., the Billings Bench Water Association advised that there was a blockage in the tunnel above North 15th at the entrance underneath of the rims. They used an excavator to free the blockage, and by about 8:30, the blockage was released and the flow of water immediately started to subside from that area. By 7:30 a.m., the flow of water into the canal in Laurel was shut down by the Billings Bench Water Association. At about 8:43 a.m., the same excavator had driven back to the area above the 1900 and 2000 block of Burnstead, where it was working to support some of the soil that had been eroded from the overflow. And there was a soil collapse with the excavator, and the operator was able to escape uninjured. Initial response efforts included the voluntary evacuation of residents in the affected area as a result of the ongoing potential hazard. A shelter at Cedar Hall at the Metro Park Center was activated and operated by the Red Cross and staff from Yellowstone County. There were no reported injuries during this event. Property damage has occurred. However, the assessment in regard to the extent of damages remains ongoing. Currently, the water in the canal continues to drop. As the water levels drop, so too will the risks for property and persons in the area. It is anticipated that once the water in the canal drops to safe levels, that affected occupants may return to their homes and assess for damages. At this time, I'll have Jim come up here and provide some statements for his involvement from the beginning of the incident. We'll have a few more provide comments, and we'll open up for questions afterwards. Jim?
Yeah, like Lieutenant Woolley said, I'm Jim Stott with the Billings Bench Water Association, and First off, I just want to thank everybody for the quick response, and this goes from the city police, the city fire department, our crew, Donna's construction, Castle Rock excavation, and without all these people responding super quickly and on point, we could have had a big disaster. But it was mitigated through the help of everybody that showed up. So we really appreciate that. All we know right now is there was a blockage in front of the tunnel. It's one of the things we have talked about over the years that we've been very concerned about, that if the tunnel ever did get blocked, we would have a serious situation on our hands. In fact, 2 years ago, there were some humongous rocks, I don't know exactly how big they were, that sat right above the tunnel, and we worked with the city to take those rocks down because we were concerned that those rocks could, as all these other rocks we see coming down off the rims, we were concerned. So we co-opted with the city, we took those rocks down to make sure those rocks did not go in and block our tunnel. So this time, we don't know what the blockage was from. Luckily, we did have construction equipment up there. The city's been doing some work stabilizing the bank. So we had Castle Rock Construction was up there with their stuff, and GSI was there. As soon as we got some things moved out of the way and as quickly as we could, we got this big excavator in to remove the blockage. By that point, by the time we got to that point, Gary was down on the other end where the water was overtopping, and actually it was going over the top, coming back on the north side of the tunnel where we have, do you have that where the concrete, well, where the excavator is? And I don't know if you can see that, the concrete, right there's a concrete liner, because in 1937, this is where we did have a breach of the canal. So our board at that time, I guess was at that time, we put in this concrete liner. Water was actually going over the north side of the ditch and coming back underneath the canal, and we were losing water that way. As soon as we got the blockage taken care of, we had him walk down there with his excavator, and as you can see, he got just a hair too close to the void and fell in. But that water, once the water went down, that water was gone. I mean, the water coming underneath the canal was gone. So about an hour ago, our canal had probably dropped down to half of what was in there early this morning. I believe we're probably dropping at 6 inches an hour approximately. And by early evening or late tonight, the canal will be just about dry. I do really appreciate everybody's response. I think it was a great team effort. We got by. I mean, we had no loss of life, no major damage. I know there's some out there, but anyway.
Thanks, Jim. I think we'll bring Pepper up next. Chief Ellis.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pepper Valdez. I'm the Assistant Fire Chief at Billings Fire Department. I'll just give a brief synopsis of our response to this emergency. At 7:15, we started to receive phone calls from residents. The initial page went out. And with that initial page, we did send a battalion chief, 2 engines, and 1 truck company. Once our battalion chief arrived on scene, he determined that we needed additional resources, and then asked for 2 more battalion chiefs and a safety officer, along with 3 standby crews to assist with the rest of the city. At 7:22, we were notified that the DES coordinator, Casey Williams, was responding. And at 7:23, notified by the BBWA that there was some kind of blockage that was causing this overflow. And then at 7:41, our battalion chief made contact with the street department to get them rolling. And then at 8:51, there was a voluntary evacuation given by the Billings Fire Department. And then we were notified by our DS coordinator that Cecil Hall at the Metro was open and ready to receive any displaced residents. As of now, we still have one crew on scene to help with questions that any of those residents could possibly have. So that's what I have at this point. And with that, I'll turn it over to our DES coordinator.
Thank you. Thank you, Griffin. Well, like Chief Valdez says, at about 7:21 this morning, I received a phone call from 911 dispatch telling me what was going on. Responded to the scene, made contact in the 7:30-ish time period with Lieutenant Chief Lyons of the Billings Fire Department. We started surveying the damage, where the water was going. We made a large loop through those neighborhoods. Determined that we would have displaced citizens, so we set up a shelter. That shelter, like Chief said, is going to be at Cedar Hall at the Metro Park. That shelter was opened at 08:13 this morning. The state DES and the Red Cross was notified, and they'll be manning that. I would say to any of the citizens that are displaced or need individual assistance or can't go back to their homes tonight because of flooding damage, you can go to Cedar Hall and hook up with the Red Cross that way, or you can call, and this is the recommended method, the Red Cross 1-800 number, and I'll give that to all the media, which is 1-800-272-6668. That's 1-800-272-6668, and that's for any citizens that need a place to stay or need humanitarian aid because they can't get back to their apartment. I would also encourage everybody who's been affected to notify their insurance company, and if they have a landlord, to make contact with their landlord. We did send out a code red message to roughly that same polygon area. That went out about 8:36, notifying people that we were recommending an evacuation and told them a shelter would be open at Cedar Hall. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mayor Cole.
Thank you, Casey. I'm Bill Cole. I'm the mayor in Billings. I do want to express appreciation on behalf of the city that no one was injured as a result of these events. Also, tremendous appreciation for a job well done by first responders, everybody who was involved. I got a call from County Commissioner Dennis Pittman about 8:30. Thank you, Commissioner, to alert me what was going on. I got on site a few minutes after 9. Thank you goes out to first BBWA, Billings Bench Water Association. The ditch company, as you heard before, was on this, and we're very, very fortunate that they were. They detected that the water was rising as a result of the blockage in the tunnel. They took steps to mitigate that by stopping the water coming into the ditch and diverting at Canyon Creek. And so thank you to the ditch company. Also to Billings Fire Department, the response organization here, Billings Police Department, who alerted the neighbors, secured the area, monitored the situation. Job well done. County DES, City County DES, Casey Williams, our coordinator, as you heard, was there immediately, helping to organize the response. Casey, thank you. Excellent response. Our city administrator, Chris Kukulski, arrived the same time as I did. He and I have been up there ever since. Thank you to the Red Cross, who has set up the evacuation center at Cedar Hall. The city administrator and I were over there a few minutes ago. They're operating. There was only a couple people, but they do have food, and they also are helping with transportation and advice. You heard the 800 number. If anybody needs help, please call that number to get help. Also, just want to offer sympathy and condolences for the neighbors that have been displaced there. There is no doubt that even though there was no physical injury as far as we know, there was property damage and people have been displaced. And again, please contact the Red Cross if you need accommodations this evening or in the days ahead. lastly, and I'll sit down, but this problem does, of course, highlight the need that we have for planning for an even greater potential release, and where there could be injuries and even greater property damage. We remember that in 1937, I think Jim alluded to that, there was a catastrophic flood in Billings, and there are a number of ditches, not just the BBWA, that flow through Billings. As the city has grown up and the population has increased, that risk has also increased. The LEPC, Local Emergency Planning Committee, was very much aware of the risk posed by the ditches, and this is part of the planning that is done. But you can't plan too much, and so this is a good reminder of the need to improve and make sure that those plans are in place in the event that there was an even greater release. And then, of course, lastly, it does remind us of the need to find long-term solutions to make sure that the water can flow through the city safely, and not just with the BBWA, but also all of the ditches, because these things are critical to our economy, but they also do pose a risk to life and safety. So that's what I have. Again, job well done, and much appreciated for all the responders. Are we open for questions, or was there anybody else on the list?
We're open for questions.
Okay, so if we have questions, I don't know who's going to be the MC. Brandon, we'll turn it to you. We'll designate you the MC to handle questions or to appoint somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Right now we'll open up for questions from the media, and we'll probably direct whatever question is to what official that your questions are in their lane.
I think I've got one for the Water Association.
Come on up, Jim.
Thanks, appreciate it.
I said Gary would
Let's see, so we still have no idea of what the blockage is, right?
Not at this time. We've got to get the water out of the ditch to assess things. And then, to tell you the truth, I'm not really sure we're really going to know then. I mean, we have this, what was it, John Deere 320 excavator, a huge excavator up there. And it's one that you see in the pictures. When he went in there, he was just moving everything he could move. I mean, pulling stuff, moving it, and trying to get that blockage out of there. Luckily, he had long enough reach, we could get it moving on, so.
And I know a lot of folks down the ditch use that water for irrigation and stuff, and they've been without it for, I guess, days before this too. What do you tell those folks that have been without water?
Well, we tell them we're sorry, and we're gonna try and remedy the situation as quickly as possible, because we do have 17,000 acres plus of agricultural farmland out there, and everybody's screaming for water. On top of it, we're in a very dry year, so, and we do also, I mean, on top of that, we have 4 golf courses on our water, city parks. We have 115 residential users of water from our system. So I just like to tell people our system is very important to the city of Billings. Along with that, we charge, countless number of wells from Laurel to east of Shepherd. And I guess just one last comment. I mean, our ditch, we started running water in 1905. And I want everyone to know that the main goal of the Billings Bench Water Association since 1905 has been to deliver water safely and efficiently to our stockholders and to be good neighbors, with the city of Billings. And that is what we have strived to do since day one. So,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I got another question that might apply to you if it's better for somebody else. Obviously, step forward. But I mean, the scene that you've described this morning, it sounds like it was imperative that you act quickly. I mean, how close were we to something worse, and what would something worse look like in this scenario?
well, I was on the end up by the tunnel. Gary Davis was down by where the excavator went in. He called me at 8:15 and basically said, Jim, we got to get that tunnel unblocked or we're going to lose the ditch. So 15 minutes, 30 minutes, Gary?
I think basically that ditch up there, it carries about 350 CFS of water at that point, and I think, I'm sorry. And so my name is Gary Davis, I'm on the board of directors of Billings Bench Water Association, and I think that the canal up there carries somewhere around 350, 400 cubic feet per second of water. In my estimation, we lost maybe 10-15% of that through the bank and through the hole that you see there where the excavator is in that hole. And what we consider to be lose the ditch would be as all 350 CFS went down through the city of Billings. And so if the water that you saw, the damage that you saw was created by 10% of it, it would have been 10 times as great or more. It would have been not good.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were out, you were able to tell that the levels were rising. I mean, maybe explain a little bit of how that monitoring process works. I mean, how...
Billings Bench Water hires ditch riders, and we have one man that is assigned from Laurel to this tunnel, and his job is to go up twice a day, every day, 7 days a week, and take readings. We have staff gauges in the ditch so that we can tell the level of the water in the ditch. And it was Gary Hoffman, our employee, that found that making his normal rounds at 6 o'clock this morning on a Sunday morning, that recognized that where it was supposed to be like a 4.2 number, it was a 6 number. It was a 1.5 foot higher than he expected it to be at that time. And so he alerted his boss, and his boss directed him to go turn the water off, because it is such a great lag time from where we shut it off in Laurel, and we can spill some of the water at Sioux, Montana at Canyon Creek, but it takes a long time for that drop to come. And honestly, we couldn't have waited for that drop to come if Castle Rock Excavation hadn't got that plug undone. This little hole that you see up there, in a matter of 10 minutes, would have been the entire flow of the ditch running down through there, and it would have been much, much worse.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, I mean, the goal is to get people the water they need. I mean, do you have any idea on a timeline right now about, you know, when this might be filled?
We need to get water out of the ditch and assess where we're at.
Yeah.
We're going to work closely with the city, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
On these things.
Okay. Yeah.
One more from me. Making sure I got this straight. The excavator fell in, or the section of earth that the excavator was under collapsed after it had removed the blockage, right?
Right.
Yes.
The first job of that excavator was to remove the blockage, and then he walked the half a mile up to fix this damage. And by the time he got there, the water levels had receded. In this picture that you see, there's a concrete wall on the far side, and the water was above, when it was blocked, it was above those concrete wall on the far side and the near side. It was running over the back side and underneath this concrete flume that was constructed in 1937. And the water was, and the hillside was being eroded at that point. So as he removed the blockage from the tunnel, then he was able to leave that end of the job. The water was receding, and he walked up here to just basically fix the soil support of that flume, and that's when it was undercut a little farther than the operator realized.
Yeah, so by the time he got there, it was probably a half hour from the time he had released the blockage up at the tunnel, because it's a...
And the earth had been soft from water running over it, right, from the blockage,
He
right?
wrote it
Yes,
and washed
it
it away.
loaded underneath.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any other further questions at all from anyone?
I mean, I'd just like to ask, I mean, you know, obviously the people that are displaced right now, I mean, you can talk a little bit about, you know, how they're going to be kept in the loop and you know, informed about when they can...
Talk about some of the evacuations, and then we can also talk about when we're maybe anticipating evacuees to be able to gain access back to their residence.
Yeah.
So for the residents that got displaced,
Sure.
the actions or the support that we have available to them right now is the Red Cross.
Sure.
Again, if you can't go back to your home for safety reasons, or if you can't go back to your home because of damage, et cetera, and you don't have another mechanism to shelter, then your option would be to call the Red Cross at that number. I'm going to give it again just because I want people to have it. It's 1-800-272-6668. You can call the Red Cross. They can hook you up with food, humanitarian supply, food, clothing, water, that kind of stuff if you need that type of support. And they're able to set you up and do that type of support until you can secure your resident back. I don't know for the people that were in the apartment complexes that were affected. They probably need to coordinate that with the landlord of the apartment complex. I'm sure that, well, I know the bottom floors of a couple of those apartment complexes get inundated with water. Probably not the best environment to go back and spend the night in. So if you don't have means otherwise, the Red Cross would be the thing, and then I would coordinate going back to the apartments with the landlord, and then individual homeowners can make that determination on themselves. What was the other part of that question? Was when do we think it would be?
Yeah.
I'm going to let Assistant Chief Valdez go ahead and answer that. Right now, Billings Fire Department is the incident command and in charge of life safety in that area. So I'll let him go ahead and give us that information.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, KC. At this time, as I stated earlier, we do have a crew up there standing by with a safety officer that's constantly evaluating it on a regular basis, and we feel comfortable with about 6 p.m. Letting the residents back in their home.
Okay. Yeah, well, I don't know that I have any other questions on that matter.
All right, thank you.
I mean, I'm sorry, Assistant Chief. I mean, as far as the scale of this, like, we've got a good visual representation. I mean, I've asked this question to other people today. I mean, do you have any idea? I don't know. I apologize if this was stated earlier, but how many people are in this affected zone, or how many residences? I mean, what the population footprint looks like?
You know, honestly, I don't have an answer for that question. I don't know.
I think last we checked was 96 residences that were contacted, or units were contacted by.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that was my question. Thank you.